testifying earlier, Mr. Baldwin, in court today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the first time that you've seen him since, I believe, since the day that the incident occurred?
Correct.
And of course, you see him here as a defendant in a courtroom wearing a suit jacket. He wasn't dressed like that on scene, right?
Right.
He was Harlan Ross, and he had his actor costume on, right?
Yes.
And you actually took those clothes as you did that. And of course, you remember that, right?
Yes.
And the lapel that you've reviewed has refreshed your memory.
Correct.
Joel, the director who had shot, and you used that information to then send officers to the hospital to retrieve the bullet.
Your content today.
For effect on listener.
After what you said and what you heard from your fellow officer, it is true, as you testified previously, that you did go out to seek the source of that lethal round, right?
Please rephrase your question as to the word seek.
Sure. A question came up at that trial of this issue of, did Seth Kenny really provide the ammunition to set or not, right?
Yes, I believe that came up.
Okay. And eventually there was a verdict in that case, right?
Yes.
And a good Samaritan walked into the police station and gave you the lethal ammunition, didn't they?
After the Hannah Gutierrez trial, there was an individual that came to the police station and stated they had ammunition.
And they turned in the ammunition
Yes.
and they gave it to you, right?
Yes.
And they told you that this was the ammunition that ended up with Seth Kenny that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
I do not recall all of their statements.
Who did you tell about that?
During that conversation, my Lieutenant Brian Brandel, was with me, and Detective Hancock was aware of that individual, that he had come to the sheriff's office.
And you never vouchered that and turned it over to the defense, did you?
It was a doc information situation.
I don't know what that means. Can you just explain it to me?
Meaning that I was instructed by my lieutenant to create a doc info report on it.
And I mean, what does that mean?
It means we're documenting information that this individual came and gave this ammunition to us.
Okay, but you didn't, I mean, he told you it had to do with the Rush shooting, correct?
Yes,
And he told you actually that he was a police officer in a neighboring county, right?
I believe he said he was a retired police officer, yes.
And he told you you all had been duped by Seth Kenny, didn't he?
No,
In words and substance, didn't he?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. And he said to you, I'm willing to fill out a witness statement, right?
No, I don't recall that.
He told you that the rounds came from a green ammo can, didn't he?
Judge, I have to object to your say.
Sustained.
Did you take the rounds that were provided to you? By the way, they were Starline brass, nickel primer, live, weren't they?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Really?
That is what I said.
Well, it's information acted upon is going to be my response, but he told you the reason that he was coming in is because he didn't trust law enforcement on this case.
Well, you know what? She's going to object to hear. You're going to say, lay your foundation better. You
Yeah.
are.
So, let me ask this question. How come law enforcement didn't voucher this with the rest of the evidence in the Russ case?
I'm not sure what you mean by the word voucher.
How come you didn't inventory it and put it with all the rest of the evidence in the Rust case?
I was instructed to put this in as a doc information case, which I did, and it is under that case number.
You buried it.
No,
Your lieutenant?
there is a supplemental report on it, and that was placed into evidence.
Did you ever turn that over to the defense?
I have not turned over anything to the defense. My information, it goes through the sheriff's office.
Are you aware of whether the sheriff's office ever informed the defense that a good Samaritan came in and turned in this ammunition?
I do not know.
When the defense came to view the Starline brass, nickel, primer, live ammunition with you, you didn't show them this, did you?
I did not have an evidence viewing with the defense. That was my coworker.
Your coworker didn't show this to the defense, correct?
I do not know.
Do you have any reason to believe your coworker showed this to the defense, given that it wasn't put in the same inventory as the Rust case?
No.
Did you or anyone from the sheriff's office ever tell the armorer or her lawyers that a good Samaritan came in after the verdict and gave you this information?
I do not know.
But you do agree he did tell you that Seth said this was the evidence from the shooting, correct?
I don't recall what he stated, what someone else stated.
And you told him he didn't have to write a witness statement. Law enforcement was going to type up a report on it today, right?
I never stated any such thing about a witness statement.
He offered to provide a written witness statement so that it was clear. Did he not?
I do not recall that happening.
Okay. Did you give him assurances that you would type up a report on it?
I don't recall providing assurances to him.
Did you tell him that you would write up a report on it?
I don't recall doing that either.
Do you deny it?
No.
So when you testified earlier that you never found the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, that wasn't true either, was it?
Can you rephrase the way you stated that?
Sure. As you sit here today, having had a good Samaritan turn in these 45 rounds into the precinct, right?
If that's what you're discussing, then
Yeah. You don't know whether or not you have in your possession the live rounds that killed Miss Hutchins, do you?
the live round that killed Miss Hutchins has been fired. Are you asking me about a connection between those live rounds and other ones?
I'm asking you, as we've talked about at great length, whether or not you withdraw it. I'm asking you, isn't it the case that law enforcement likely has the matching rounds to the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins?
I do not know.
And you do not know because you made a doc report about this and did not put it with the rest of the Rust evidence, correct?
Those rounds were not placed with the rest of the Rust evidence, correct?
Nor were they sent to the FBI for testing with the Rust evidence, were they?
No, they were not.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Redirect.
Ms. Poplar, are you a detective?
No, I am not.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in this case?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview Mr. Baldwin?
No,
You didn't interview Ms. Gutierrez?
no.
Mr. Spyro was asking you about the Good Samaritan who arrived at the sheriff's department after the Gutierrez trial. Can you tell the members of the jury when the Gutierrez trial was?
I don't recall exactly. I believe it was back in April.
Would you take end of February, beginning of March?
Yes, that sounds more accurate.
Okay. Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey had his own motivations for wanting to place blame on Seth Kinney to help Hannah Gutierrez?
Objection, leading, objection, irrelevant.
Overruled, overruled.
Please answer.
No, I had no knowledge of that.
Now, to be clear, is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for bringing live rounds on the movie set?
No,
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
no,
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
yes,
To try to clarify some points, Starline Brass, is that a brand of ammunition?
yes, it is.
Is it a brand of ammunition or a casing?
It is a casing.
Okay. And the live rounds from the set of rust had nickel primers, right?
Yes,
Objection, leading, every question.
Overruled.
So let me ask you this. When you went to PDQ to conduct your search, because you're not the detective, do you remember whether you had any surveillance video or not?
I don't remember.
So with regard to Mr. Kinney, prior to the search of PDQ, did Mr. Kinney actually bring his own live ammunition to the police station?
Yes,
So before you ever executed a search warrant, he went to the police station and said, I want to give you a sample of my live ammunition.
yes,
And you took that and you sent it to the FBI, right?
correct.
Now, with regard to ammunition, characteristic of some of this ammunition is it says Starline Brass on the top, right? And when I say it says Starline Brass, describe to the jurors what the emblem is that we see.
It is a star, an arching line, and then another star.
The live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, was it all Starline Brass?
No,
Was it all nickel primers?
no,
Now, in addition to the stamp on the top of the casing and the color of the primer, does ammunition have different shaped projectiles?
yes.
And when we're talking about the projectile, we're talking about, what are we talking about?
We're talking about the nose of the bullet, so what actually gets projected out the barrel of the gun.
Hold on, please. Thank you, sir. I'm showing you what's been previously admitted at State's Exhibit 26. Remind us, which are the live rounds? The suspected live rounds, sorry, we'll get there.
The ones to the right,
And what are the ones on the left?
they are dummy rounds.
Is there a different shape to the tip of the projectile?
Yes.
Tell us what the difference is.
So the live rounds,
You can mark your screen.
okay. So the live rounds have a flattened surface to them, whereas our dummy rounds come to a further point. Sorry, I was trying to draw a line. Almost like a curvature to a better point.
At my request, prior to the Gutierrez trial, did you take out a ruler and measure those?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall the size of what we call the meplet, which is that very top of the projectile? Do you recall the size of the live rounds?
Yes, the live rounds were 6 millimeters and the dummy rounds were 4 millimeters.
Every single live round, well, suspected live round, taken from the set of rust, was it a 6 millimeter meplet?
Yes,
All of the live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, to include the live ammunition that Seth Kinney brought into the sheriff's station, did any of those have 6 millimeter meplets?
no,
Do you have any evidence that Seth Kinney is the source of the live rounds on rust?
no,
If you know, is there evidence that Hannah Gutierrez brought the live rounds onto the set of rust?
yes.
What is that evidence? Let's talk about it.
The evidence that I am aware of is a photograph on a cell phone of the rounds in the background of a photograph that was taken with. Those rounds are the same ones from the same box that were being pulled from that day that were handed to Lieutenant Benavides.
Let me see if I can find an exhibit to help us. State's Exhibit 12. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and clear your screen, the marks. Is this the box you're referring to right here?
Yes,
Is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez admitted to bringing that box on the set?
yes,
And is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez actually provided evidence to the sheriff's department that she was provided that box by her father?
yes,
And the Good Samaritan who came in with the live rounds and was telling you Seth Kinney's the bad guy, that happened how long after the incident?
that happened well after the incident in after February, so March of this year.
So Ms. Hutchins died in what year?
In October of 2021.
And Mr. Teskey Hannah Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction?
Objection.
Is that right?
Objection assumes facts, not evidence, misleading.
Overruled, unless you want to come up and tell me.
Yes, I do.
All right, come on up.
Court reporter, would you read back the last question, please?
And Mr. Teskey, Hannah Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction. Is that right?
Go ahead and answer.
Yes.
In your experience, if Seth Kinney wanted to hide the fact that he had live ammunition at PDQ, he had plenty of time to get rid of it, right?
Yes.
And you found some there, right?
Yes.
And the photograph, well, was all of the live ammunition in the same place?
Yes.
Where was it found?
It was in a box on the bottom of the stack labeled as live ammo.
And for completeness, was there live ammunition found in another room away from this box?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Did you find any ammunition that was not .45 caliber anywhere else at PDQ?
I believe there were 2 boxes of marked 38 caliber ammunition that were in another room.
Did Mr. Kinney tell you that his personal firearm's a .38?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously admitted as defendants A23. Is this, so when we're talking about .45 caliber ammunition, well, let's back up. Is that the only caliber of live ammunition or suspected live ammunition found on the set of Rust?
Yes.
21, you said?
23, A23. So if you find 38 live ammunition, is that important to you?
No.
Because 38 is not .45, right?
Correct.
So the .45 caliber ammunition that you found at PDQ, is this where you found it?
Yes.
Any mistaking that that would be live ammunition?
No.
Why?
It was clearly marked as live ammunition in that box.
And let me ask you, Ms. Popple, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan, Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, when that ammunition that he brought to you after her conviction, you still have it?
Yes.
You can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right?
Yes.
And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of Rust, correct?
Yes.
And that is obvious just when you look at it, is it not?
Yes.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set of Rust by Seth Kinney?
If I recall correctly, just one.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set by Hannah Gutierrez?
No, I do not.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you were asked some questions on cross-examination, and I think they were related to, let me get the exhibit just so that we know what we're talking about. You were asked some questions about the live ammunition in the other actor's gun belt. You remember those questions on cross?
Yes.
And I think the actor was Jensen Ackles.
Correct.
Do you know whether or not Jensen Ackles checked his firearm on the set of the movie?
No, I do not.
Whether he did his own safety checks?
I do not know.
Let's talk briefly about, let me make sure I have the proper exhibit numbers for the record. I want to be clear, if you recall, I'm showing you defendants A27. Where did those dummy rounds come from?
These were the dummy rounds removed from the box with blue writing that stated dummy rounds.
And who do you know supplied those rounds?
Seth Kinney.
And I think I made a mistake on direct examination. This is State's Exhibit 30. Is that what I showed you?
Yes, I believe so.
And so those actually didn't come out of that box, did they?
Correct.
Do you know where they came from?
They came from a gun belt that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defendants A26. Is that where they came from?
Yes.
Based on the dummy rounds in both of these pictures, from the box and from the gun belt, do they have distinctive characteristics?
Yes.
Have they been identified? Who do you know who supplied all of the dummy rounds that were in the gun belt and in the box?
Yes, that was Seth Kinney.
All right. You were asked some questions about some documents that you photographed. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
I'm trying to find them. Our counsel, are all of the exhibits still up here? Take that as a yes.
No, I have these, I have the script which shows.
Those are the exhibits?
Does it say copy?
Okay, can I use them?
Yes,
Okay, as long as they're the same.
they're the same.
Okay, we'll just use your copies. This is Defendant's Exhibit A10. You remember being shown this?
Yes.
Do you have any idea when this exhibit, or I'm sorry, when scene 125 was being filmed?
No, I do not.
Same question for scene, is it 55 or 66? I apologize.
No.
68,
No.
115,
No.
118,
No.
121,
No.
130.
No.
In fact, if you know, was Ms. Hutchins killed during the filming of an actual scene?
No, she was not.
She was not. Is that right?
Correct.
Same thing here for 118 again. Ms. Hutchins wasn't killed during the filming of a scene, was she?
No, she was not.
Do you know, if you do you know who wrote the script?
No, I do not.
Do you know who the director of the movie was?
I believe that was Joel Sousa.
Do you know whether or not he's going to come in and testify?
No, I do not.
Did he testify in the Gutierrez trial?
I believe he did, yes.
Did you interview the person who wrote the script?
No.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in the room at the time of the shooting?
No, I did not.
So you haven't talked to a single person who could tell you whether these defense A3 and A10 are relevant at all. Is that right?
Correct.
You were asked by Mr. Spyro whether or not it was true that live ammunition should never be on a movie set, and you said that was correct. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You've never worked on a movie set before, have you?
No, I've not.
How do you know that?
Makes sense to me. It makes common sense.
But do you know?
No, I do not know the rules of movie sets.
You're not aware that there are safety bulletins for the use of live ammunition on movie sets?
No, I did not know that.
All total, including prop truck, the entire scene out there at Bonanza Creek, how many real firearms were taken into evidence?
If I can look at my report.
Sure.
I believe 13 in total.
13. 13 real firearms.
Yes.
Now, access to the safe.
No.
Um, Have you ever discovered any evidence that Seth Kinney was ever physically present on the set of Rust other than the day that he helped unlock the safe for your search?
No.
Do you recall you were asked some questions about you had information about a green ammo can? And that was one of the reasons that you executed the search warrant. You recall those questions?
Yes.
Do you remember where you got the information about the green ammo can?
I do not.
Did you review any of the photographs from any of the cell phone extractions that were done in this case?
No.
Did you look at any of the text messages between the different witnesses in this case?
No.
Do you have any information that Hannah Gutierrez previously asked if she could have live ammunition on the movie set she was working on with Nicolas Cage?
I do not have that information.
Okay. Now, I understand we've got some photographs of PDQ and it looked like it was really packed full of stuff. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you called it a warehouse. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about how big that facility is?
It's a very small facility. It has an upfront office, a hallway that leads to a bathroom, and one small workshop room, and then a room towards the back.
Is it possible for you to estimate the square footage?
No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. It's a small building.
Yes.
Now, as a crime scene technician, are you trained to find pieces of evidence in difficult areas?
Yes.
Have you ever been in a person's home or apartment that kind of looked like a hoarder place?
Yes.
How many times do you think that's happened to you?
Several dozen,
Several dozen.
at least. Yes.
And you're trained to look for evidence in that kind of an environment.
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Mr. Kinney's business is a prop house?
Yes.
Would you expect a prop house to be full of props?
Yes.
Was the prop house indeed full of movie props?
Yes.
Did anyone live there?
I don't believe so, no.
Do you have any idea, based on the investigation that you did, whether or not Mr. Baldwin cocked the gun when he wasn't supposed to?
I do not have any information based on what I conducted. No.
Because you didn't interview any of those witnesses, right?
Correct.
You were asked some questions, or at least one or two questions about your pretrial interview with the defense attorneys. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Mr. Spiro even present at your pretrial interview?
I don't believe so, no.
I'm almost done. Let me just review my notes.
I have two, those questions from the jury.
Okay. If you know the investigation into the source of the live rounds, did that investigation continue after the case was turned over to the district attorney's office?
I do not know.
As a crime scene technician, in your experience, do revolvers go off by themselves?
Objection?
Yeah.
701, 702.
Withdrawn.
All right, thank you. That was sustained.
I want to just back up real quick. You were asked a question on cross-examination about specifically information that you had prior to putting in the request for the accidental discharge testing. You recall that question?
Yes.
And I think you testified that you didn't recall what information you received. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you were provided a document to refresh your memory. Do you recall that?
Yes.
May I approach?
Are you finished with that, Prof?
Yeah.
That demonstrative evidence.
Thank you, Judge. No problem. Thank you.
Ms. Popple, have you had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
How many pages is it?
It is 3 pages.
Does that document say anything about accidental discharge testing?
Objection.
That is that is not, that's a refresh of memory, so it doesn't have to.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to sustain his objection.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask this question and maybe let's see how it goes. Does it say anything about the gun being destroyed?
No. I'm sorry. No.
Did that document refresh your memory as to what you understood from the FBI about what the condition of the gun would be after the testing?
Yes.
It does.
Does refresh my memory. Yes. I'm sorry. Can you restate that?
Does that document, the question you were asked on cross-examination was about the information that,
Counsel,
okay.
I'm sorry to break you up, but let me give you these.
Ms. Popple, was a fanny pack collected from the set of Rust?
Yes.
Do you know who the fanny pack belonged to?
Yes.
Who's that?
That was Hannah Gutierrez.
And was any of the live ammunition found in the fanny pack?
No.
So after Ms. Hutchins was shot, do you know whether or not the gun was unloaded by anyone on the set?
The information that was relayed to me was that the firearm was emptied by Hannah onto the cart.
Does that include the spent casing?
Yes.
All right, Council President.
I'll pass the witness.
I just have one question. The Good Samaritan asked you, in reference to the ammunition he provided, question, and that's the one that killed Helena. And you said yes, correct?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
I don't deny it.
No further questions.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take our afternoon bathroom break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and let's try to get back in around 3:20. Okay, thank you.
Please leave your hands in your chairs. All rise for the jury.
And then we're going to go on the bench conference, but we're in recess for all intents and purposes for bathroom break for the rest of you.
Let me pull up definition on involuntary manslaughter for New Mexico. So we can see exactly what the statute is. So, okay, we've got one from a
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to watch our coverage of the Alec Baldwin trial. Look, it's cases like this one that show you not only how...
okay. Let's see. Oops. This is from a law office in New Mexico. It says, the manslaughter law in New Mexico defines the crime of unlawful killing of another person without malice. So far, that fits. State recognizes two types of manslaughter charges, including voluntary manslaughter, a third-degree felony resulting in the death of a human being, and involuntary manslaughter, a fourth-degree felony. Our criminal defense attorney let's skip that advertising paragraph. Overview of New Mexico's manslaughter laws. New Mexico's manslaughter law involves several factors and considerations when facing charges. However, it is helpful to understand what the statutes are and how they work beforehand when reading legal definitions. Below, we explain the role of criminal statutes and how we use them, and conclude by breaking our state manslaughter statute specifically. The role of criminal statutes we'll skip. New Mexico's manslaughter statute. You can find the manslaughter statute at NMSA 30-2-3. New Mexico criminal statute offer relevant details such as definitions, classifications, grading levels, and considerations. Manslaughter charges are felonies under the statute, which impose more severe sentence than misdemeanors. Let's do a breakdown of this law so you can understand a solid understanding of what it means section by section. Standard definition. Manslaughter is the unlawful killing of a human being without malice. This definition tells us that it is a crime to legally end a person's life, but is considered manslaughter when committed without the intent to cause harm or violate someone's legal rights. It sets the standard definition of a crime before explaining the variations. Subsection A, voluntary manslaughter. I don't think we're going for that, but I'll just summarize it in a nutshell. Voluntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed upon a sudden quarrel or heat of passion, and that's not the situation. So voluntary manslaughter is out. So subsection B, involuntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to a felony, or in commission of an lawful act which might produce the death in an unlawful manner or without due caution or circumspection. And that's the issue, is without due caution and circumspection. In section B, the definition is a little longer, but basically accounts for acts of negligence. Involuntary manslaughter is a fourth-degree felony under New Mexico's law. Manslaughter charges are considered violent crimes in New Mexico since they recognize the death of another individual allegedly caused by someone else, voluntary or involuntary actions. If you face manslaughter charges, it's critical to understand that you could face a lengthy prison sentence and criminal fines as described below. Manslaughter conviction penalties in New Mexico. You face prison, fines, and other consequences if convicted of manslaughter in New Mexico. Since voluntary and involuntary manslaughter convictions are classified as felonies, they are among some of the most serious criminal charges one could face. However, their grading is different, with voluntary manslaughter classified as a third-degree felony resulting in the death of a human being, and involuntary manslaughter classified as a fourth-degree felony. Prison sentences. Under NMSA 31-18-8 or -15, New Mexico criminal judges have the discretion to basic prison sentences for manslaughter convictions, including voluntary manslaughter up to 6 years imprisonment and a mandatory 2-year parole period if the sentence to any other term of imprisonment, and that's not applicable. So we go to involuntary manslaughter, up to 18 months of imprisonment and 1 year of parole if sentenced to any term of imprisonment. Fines. The same statute also addresses basic fines for both voluntary and involuntary manslaughter as up to $5,000. Collateral consequences. Upon release from prison, it is not uncommon for people to face intense scrutiny and stigma with a felony conviction showing up in their background check. This situation can make it difficult to find employment, rent a home, and reclaim custody or visitation rights with children. Yes, you can beat your manslaughter charges. Anyone accused of a crime in New Mexico can defend their rights in court. Serious charges call for immediate action, including contacting a criminal defense attorney, beginning class defense investigation, assessing the case against you, and preparing a defense. Manslaughter charges are defensible. Prosecutors do not always get their allegations right and may have even violated your civil rights in the process. Do not let them unlawfully place the guilt on you without putting up a fight. Get legal advice and help from experienced criminal defense law firm in New Mexico. And well, Baron Flying Club, I agree with you there. A prop can be anything. A prop can be a rock. A prop can be a cotton ball. It just means that it's something that is being used on the set. And, maybe it's decoration, maybe it's something that the actors are going to handle. But it was a real gun capable of firing real bullets, and sadly, Helena died as a result. Now, in the Hannah Gutierrez trial, they went over the type of firearm and the trigger pull, and it's not it doesn't take a lot of force to pull that trigger. So, anyway, I don't think Alec certainly didn't intend to do any harm. He wasn't doing something like, horsing around and playing, going, haha, bang, bang, you're dead. But he didn't go to he didn't go to the mandatory meeting with the armorer to educate people, and he didn't check the gun himself, which from gun safety experts he should have done. So, I don't know, is the public really going to be served by locking Alec Baldwin up for a time? Probably not. It can act as a deterrent for other people, but the whole thing is this was an involuntary act, and so other people who involuntarily kill somebody, they're not going to be able to go, well, Alec Baldwin went to jail for something, so I should be extra careful. Well, it should, but the thing is, it's involuntary. Okay, it looks like we're ready to go back, maybe.
Now, Hutchins was the cinematographer on the Western.
Okay, we'll listen to what this expert says.
From a prop gun fatally striking her Baldwin maintains his innocence, claiming he never actually pulled the trigger. Still, he's charged with involuntary manslaughter and faces an 18-month prison sentence. So the jury's been sent to their afternoon recess, but we are in luck. We have Law and Crime's very own Anjanette Levy outside that courthouse with the latest. Hey, Anjanette, how you doing?
Hey, Rich, how are you? I'm doing well. It's been an interesting afternoon in there with the redirect of Marissa Popple. What do you think?
Well, I think she was on the stand a long time, right? So a lot of cross and then redirect. I mean, what do you think the net is from her? How does it go?
Well, I thought that Alec Spiro was making some very interesting points on cross, and then Carrie Morrissey got up there, the special prosecutor, on redirect, and I felt like she kind of undid some of the things that Alec Spiro had done on cross. I mean, that's kind of her job. Interesting points that she about this Good Samaritan. I found this very interesting. After Hannah Gutierrez Reed's conviction, Carrie Morrissey says there was this Good Samaritan that came into the sheriff's office and presented them with .45 caliber ammo. And said, hey, you know, maybe this is the ammo from the Rust set. Alex Spiro had asked about this on cross-examination. On redirect, Carrie Morrissey asked the question, did you know that this happened after her conviction? And, you know, this was a friend of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father, this Good Samaritan who brought this ammo in. On cross, Alex Spiro made it sound like that was never investigated and that ammo was kind of hidden. He said it was buried, that was his word, and put aside. Apparently the ammo is still at the sheriff's office. It wasn't put in the Rust investigation file or vault or locker, what have you, because it could be visually inspected and they could tell that it was not the Rust ammo, the live ammo. So I thought that was an interesting point. I thought that she kind of came in and undid a lot of what the headway he had maybe made on cross-examination. Also, something that was really interesting, Rich, they're talking about juror questions. And in some jurisdictions, the judge will allow jurors to submit questions in writing. Typically, though, the judge will ask those questions after both sides are done with their questioning. And it almost looked like, Rich, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. We're sitting in the courtroom. I'm sitting next to a friend of mine trying to figure out what's going on. And it almost seemed like those were being given to the prosecutor and maybe she was reading them. So that's still trying to figure out what was going on with that.
That's what we thought, Anjanette. We thought here in the studio that at least one of those notes was presented to a prosecutor, actually interrupted the redirect to give the note to the prosecutor. Is that what it seemed like inside the courtroom?
It kind of did. And we don't want to say for certain that that was what happened, but that was how we were perceiving it. And then we started kind of Googling. We were sitting next to one another and, Larry started Googling the statute about that and the regulations or the rules about that. So the juror questions obviously are allowed. Some judges permit it. Some don't. I guess it's by, each locality has their own rules. So I think it's really interesting when the jurors, I love it when the jurors ask questions because you really get to know what they are thinking and what questions they are interested in.
Yeah, it's good for the lawyers. It allows the lawyers to know what the jurors are focusing on and to address that. I want to ask you a question about the lawyers. You have these two very experienced prosecutors from New Mexico, and you have these two youngish lawyers from a very good law firm that I know very well out in New York. How do you think the lawyers are playing in the courtroom? How do they seem? How are they interacting with the jury?
Well, yesterday I felt like, in just watching it unfold, and I actually moved kind of over yesterday and this morning to the Baldwin side of the courtroom so I could get a better look at the jury because it was really hard to see their facial expressions from where I was sitting yesterday on the media side. I've kind of wondered if Alex Spiro, if his style was playing with this jury. You have a lot of older people on this jury, a lot of women. He's a good-looking guy. I'm not going to say that matters, but I mean, he's easy to look at, easy to listen to. His voice is good, but he talks a little fast. He moves a little fast through the evidence, and he's New York, right? This is New Mexico. This is a little different out here, and so I could see maybe these prosecutors being able to relate more or coming across as more relatable to this jury. I don't know if you've picked up on this either, Rich, but Carrie Morrissey, she really has a way about her. You know, I see on social media, some people love her, some people don't, but she has a way of really delivering her questions. You know, when she comes back up there to really land the question and make her point, she has there's a performance aspect to her that I think that she really brings something to that. She knows what she wants to do. She knows the point that she wants to get across, and she really delivers it well. So two very, very, very different styles here.
Yeah, I
New
see.
York versus the local New Mexico lawyers.
I see that too. Now, she seems to be the lawyer who so far is commanding the room. And that a lot of times is the lawyer
Yes.
you want to be. She gets the attention. And I think you were trying to be nice. The word you're looking for with Alec Spiro is he may come across as slick. And that would be a problem if he
Maybe
comes
a little
across.
slick.
Yeah, a little slick. That could be a problem.
Or that he's trying to pull a fast one.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm going to come in here and pull a fast one. I did think the whiteboard was good. That was interesting. He went old school. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think that can always be really good. I like it when they get out and they start writing and you're trying to show the jury where you're going. But yeah, if they feel like you're coming in here and trying to like pull a fast one on them and you're being too slick, might not play well in the end.
Yep. Now, I liked his opening. So let me ask you, though, about the man of the hour, Alec Baldwin. He's had to sit there in court hour after hour. That's a tough job. And there are multiple trials.
It really is.
There are multiple cameras in this courtroom. So there's a camera on him every second. And we even saw at one point during one of the arguments this afternoon, he got up and left the courtroom. What do you think of the way he's carrying himself inside that New Mexico courtroom?
Well, I think it is exhausting, and I've mentioned this before, and no shade to anybody who's in their 60s or anything like that, but you've got the stress of being on trial. He's a 66-year-old man with 7 young children, and he doesn't want to be here. I mean, there was a People.com article yesterday that quoted an exclusive source, you know, somebody from the Baldwin side saying this is not the way Alec Baldwin and Hilaria Baldwin wanted to spend their summer. Who would? But this is what they're having to do. And so I thought I think he's engaged, he's talking to his lawyers, and I think things have been good, but there have been some times where he maybe appeared to look like he might be nodding off a little. Keep in mind, I'm seeing him from behind. You all are watching him on the main feed and you're seeing his face. But I'm not sure walking up during the argument when you're the defendant in the case to go out and get maybe coffee or go to the bathroom, probably not the best idea. So that probably was not a good thing to do. So I think you just need to wait and sit, even if it's outside the presence of the jury. This is your trial, so you've got to stay put and you've got to look engaged.
Yeah, it's okay.
And not defensive. He's got to stop this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the getting up was okay because the jury wasn't in the room. He could never do that in front of the jury. You never want to walk out while the jury's there or walk back in. So I've noticed in this trial the first 2 days, there's a ton of evidentiary issues. There's a lot of sidebars.
Yeah.
There was a big break for evidence. And it seems like to some extent, the trial is struggling to get going. Is that the way it feels in the courtroom?
Well, I can tell you right now that it seemed like there were a lot of sidebars this morning. Then we had the hearing at 1 p.m. Mountain Time today over the redactions for the police interview, which to me, I felt like that should have happened much earlier in the process. I don't know why that's happening today. That seems like something that could have been handled a while ago, potentially. Maybe they were waiting on some of the rulings from the judge, but some of these things were so, I don't know, no-brainers for arguments to be made by the defense that I don't know why they weren't made sooner, especially when they have an army of lawyers on their side. And then, you know, all these sidebars and all the arguing about whatever, the objections, it's taking a long time. And Corporal Alexandria Hancock, the lead detective in this case, was supposed to be on the stand today. She is supposed to be on the stand. It is after 3 o'clock Mountain Time. And the judge, I think, wanted this trial to go to like 4 or 4:30 every day. Yesterday, we were pushing it closer to 5, I believe. So I don't know how on earth, there's no way they're getting through Alexandria Hancock today, when especially they were going to play Alec Baldwin's police interview because she's the one who interviewed him. So there's no way. And then Hannah Gutierrez Reed was expected to possibly testify tomorrow morning. That the prosecution wanted to call her tomorrow morning. That's not happening. I mean, I'm calling it right now. I mean, we're not staying here till 7 o'clock tonight to hear testimony, I don't believe. So I don't know when. I would assume Alexandria Hancock will be on the stand into tomorrow.
Yeah, I find the first couple of days of trial are always a little sluggish because you have to go over so much basic information for the jury. You have these evidentiary issues. I take your point. A lot of this you would think would have been addressed in motions in limine. There were substantial pretrial proceedings the other day, so it does seem to interfere a little bit. I want to ask you one substantive question. The way I heard opening statement by Alec Spiro, it sounded like they are conceding or almost conceding that Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger, which is a change from what I thought they were going to do. Is that the way you heard it?
It does sound like that. And there was also mentioned, Rich, yesterday, I can't recall if it was an opening or maybe talking with some other witness. Oh, yes, it was during Nicholas LaFleur's testimony about how he was telling Alec Baldwin, quit talking to people about this. You keep the witnesses apart. You don't want their statements contaminated. And yet he's talking to Dave Halls. And even though he was told not to talk to anybody, things like that are going on. And, I'm just like, he talked about contaminating statements and he was asking LaFleur, can your memory be tainted by somebody else? So they talked about in opening statement, Alex Spiro did, about, maybe not intentionally pulling the trigger. Maybe he didn't intend to pull the trigger. And then now we have this introduction of this, phenomenon of somebody tainting your memory, maybe. So we've got these two kind of things coming in here. To because it was a hair trigger and didn't realize what had happened.
Right.
So maybe he thinks he didn't do it. I was talking to Ben Chu, Johnny Depp's lawyer, last week too, and he said maybe it's a coping mechanism, a psychological defense mechanism, a coping mechanism. You just can't get yourself to think that you did that. So, but I think the defense, memory contamination, or I didn't intend to do it.
Well, they have to do that because they have a problem, which is the evidence seems pretty compelling that the gun wouldn't have fired unless he pulled the trigger. And he has those statements after the fact where he pretty clearly says, yes, I didn't pull the trigger. And he's got to explain that. Now, do you think he's going to take the stand to explain it, or is it still too early to tell?
Well, later in the game, depending on how they feel the rest of the case is going. But I kind of have felt for the last week or two that he is the only person, Rich, who can explain why he said the things that he said. I mean, the whole reason that they did the accidental discharge testing that basically either destroyed or damaged the gun was because he said that. That's the only reason they asked the FBI to do it. We have to figure out if this thing can fire without the trigger being pulled. So they did it in response to that interview with George Stephanopoulos back in December of 2021. That's the only reason they did that testing. So he's the only person I feel like who can explain why he said what he said. And, Rich, just for your information, the ABC News interview is listed as an exhibit on the defense's exhibit list. So how do you get that in unless you bring it in through Alec Baldwin or George Stephanopoulos? Yeah. I'm kind of been wondering to myself, how do you bring that into evidence?
I think that's
an exhibit unless one of those people testifies.
I think that's where we're heading to. All right, Anjanette, I hear they're heading back into the courtroom. I know you want to get in the courtroom. We're going to take a quick break, come back and pick up what's going on in there. Thank you so much. I believe I'll see you tomorrow morning because I'm back here.
Will you raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I would.
All right. Have a seat, tuck into the microphone.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Good Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Alessandro Pietta. I come from Italy. I am a gun manufacturer. I'm actually the guy that made the gun that been used in the movie.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You have to answer her.
Oh, sorry.
I appreciate all the
Sorry about that.
information, but I have to ask you a question and then you answer the question.
Sorry.
All right, so you've told us you're a gun manufacturer, is
Yes,
that
I
right? And what company do you own?
It's named Fab Fratelli Pietta.
Okay. And do you manufacture Pietta firearms?
Yes, that's the name of the company in English.
How long have you been manufacturing firearms?
The company has been founded in 1963 from our dad, and my brother and myself are running the company since 2000.
And are you familiar with how Pietta firearms are actually made?
Yes, of course.
And how are you familiar?
I've been working in the company since 1995, and I've been taught by my dad how to produce a gun and assist my brother studying engineering demo.
Does Pietta Firearms have quality control measures and inspections of their firearms?
Yes, we do.
And what are those?
We start from raw material, and then we check all the machining part, and then we got our quality control on the assembly department, and of course, before shipping the gun to the customer. So we got several steps in our procedure line.
And does Pietta Firearms use
A lot in the industrial 4.0, that means that we are using the most actual manufacturing technology available on the market.
so you're basically high-tech?
Yeah, we use CNC machine for control of robotic system. It's not just by hand, but also use the modern technology.
Okay. So, excuse me, what does Pietta Firearms do to ensure that a gun that leaves Pietta Firearms doesn't have any defects? And Mr. Pietta, if I can just have you pull the microphone a little closer and then speak a little slower.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
And then if you could just speak a little slower, please.
sure. We do have our quality control operation, but being an Italian manufacturer, by law, we had to send the gun to a national proof house. It's not a private company, but it's a public company. And all the guns that we produce, all the guns that are imported or made in Italy, need to be tested by this proof house. They have their own standard quality controls, and they also give us a certificate, and they stamp on the gun their marks. So there are different systems that we use to check the guns.
What is a proof house?
A proof house is a public company that shoot the gun, test the gun, take certain dimension. We have CIP homologations that is different from the American. It's called SAMI, but they're very similar on the concept. We have certain dimension and we check in order to be sure that the gun works properly. They also shoot the gun higher pressure, so they know that the gun will not blow up during our regular training section. And of course, they check all the safeties on the guns.
So before the gun leaves your company, Pietta Firearms, do you guys do checks of the guns first?
We do our own final check for quality reports. That mean that we also looking for aesthetical defects. And of course, we do our own quality on the trigger pull or on the action to be sure that everything in proper situation.
And so in addition to that, then it goes to the proof house and they do their checks as well?
The proof house check the gun as a piece of steel, if you pass that name. I check the gun for the customer because they want to get a nice gun, so without any scratches or without any cosmetical defects.
Does that also involve checking the internal parts of the gun to make sure that there are no defects?
That done before by our quality control office, and we do that in the company.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 50.
No objection.
Your Honor, being that there is no objection, I would move into evidence State's Exhibit 50 and ask to have it published.
Yes.
On the screen in front of you, Mr. Pieta, is State's Exhibit 50. Do you recognize that?
Yeah,
What
it's
is
one
it?
of our single action revolver. Probably, actually, it's written 45 long Colt. That's the caliber, 7.5 barrel length.
Are you familiar with this particular gun?
I know this gun because I know that gun has been produced for a trade show called SHOT Show, and it's been shipped to Vegas. In particular for that show.
Were you involved in the manufacture of this particular gun?
I was personally involved producing this sample for that trade show.
And do you recall when this gun was manufactured?
I guess 2016 or 2017.
Okay. How do you manufacture this particular firearm?
Well, I would not say manufacturer. I could say I prepare this gun because being a replica, we need to make our customer happy. And of course, our main customers are collectors. So when we prepare a new sample or a new model, we study the books. So we study the American history and we look for details just to make a new model. That's why I've been involved to introduce this gun during this trade show.
So you said this was a single action revolver.
This is a single action type revolver. That means that every time you want to shoot, you need to pull the hammer, cock the hammer, and pull the trigger.
Is that what a single action means?
Yes.
So you have to cock the hammer before you pull the trigger?
Yes.
Okay. Is this different from other Pieta single action revolvers?
It's different on outside because the details are different. We are not used to make any marks on the grip, or we are not used to write the caliber on the trigger guard. But this is basically is the same gun with a different configuration.
So are the internal components of this gun the same as for others?
Yes, correct.
Pieta?
Correct.
Are the internal components of this particular gun, are they interchangeable with other Pieta single action revolvers?
Yes, they do.
Now, is the hammer to this Exhibit 50 that we see in front of us, is that different from other Pieta revolver hammers?
As the sides of the hammer and being polished just to create a different color.
Okay. But is it similar in as far as specifications?
It's the same.
It's the same to other firearms? I'm going to show you what's been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 6. If I can have the deputy bring it up and ask you to put on some gloves.
Sure.
So you can.
Yeah. Go. No, I don't.
He has it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
There's a pair of scissors there.
Sure.
If you can open the box, Mr. Pieta. Do you recognize what's in there?
Yeah, it seems to be the same gun that's on the screen.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 51.
No objection.
I move into evidence 51, Your Honor, with no objection.
Case 51 is submitted, you may publish.
Now, if you can take a look at that firearm, Exhibit 6 that's in front of you, does it have a serial number?
Yes, it is.
And I'm going to put on the screen State's Exhibit 51. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, that's our invoice that probably has been used to ship the gun to EMF.
Does this invoice contain or list this particular gun that's in front of you, Exhibit 6?
Can I check the serial number?
Yes, please.
Can I touch the gun?
Yes, with you both.
Yeah, it's the same serial number.
Okay. So did Pieta Firearms then ship this gun, Exhibit 6, per this invoice?
Yes, we did.
And when and to whom was it shipped?
Has been shipped to EMF company. That is one of our customer that show with us during SHOT Show. So to get the gun inside United States, we need to get someone can get all the license to import the gun for us. That's why this sample has been shipped to EMF.
Okay. What kind of a company is EMF?
EMF is an importing company, and they sell to distributor, dealers, and to individuals.
Is EMF associated with Pieta Firearms?
Yes, it is.
How?
We, Alberto and myself, own EMF.
So you own EMF?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so when did you ship this particular firearm that's in front of you to EMF?
It's written on the invoice, 27 November 2017.
So that's when it left Italy to go to EMF?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me go back to ask you a question about this hammer. You had said that it's nickel plated because this is for a particular.
No, it's not nickel plated, it's just polished.
Oh, polished, I'm sorry. Does that change its functionality?
No.
Okay. Did this particular gun go to the proof house?
Absolutely.
And was it approved by the proof house?
Yes, it is.
And how can you tell?
Well, there are some marks on the frame. And it's clearly on the top of the serial number. So you can see them. There's also another proof mark on the cylinder. So they're easy to understand that this gun has been proved by the proof house.
And what does that mean to you as a gun manufacturer that's been approved by the proof house?
That we have produced a good gun, follow the CIP regulation, and the gun can be sold to anyone. Without that marks, we cannot sell or produce or export any guns.
Now, once it comes to the United States, do you know if your guns or these guns that you import are also subjected to testing by American agencies?
No, actually, all the guns that want to be imported in the United States need to be approved by ATF first. So when we start producing this single action revolver, we send a sample or few samples to ATF agent and they approve the gun for us.
Do you know what ATF does in order to approve the guns?
Mostly they have a schedule and with details, so they need to check if our guns, actually a gun, match their requests. And also they call drop test that is used to see if the gun is safe enough to avoid any kind of malfunction.
You said a drop test. What do you understand that to be?
Drop test means that the gun has to be approved. They have a safety, and in this particular gun, the safety is on the cylinder, and they put the safety on. They put a primer, not a light brown, of course, a dummy. They put the hammer in the first notch, so the firing pin is lined with the primer, and they take a weight, let it drop at the rate of 4 feet, something like that, 5 times. And again, the system should not shoot. If that is okay, they approve the gun.
And so does your Pieta firearm revolvers get put through that test by ATF?
Absolutely.
And that's to test to make sure it doesn't fire on its own?
No, that test means that we have safety on the gun.
Are you familiar with how this particular gun fires?
What that mean?
Well, what does it take to
You need to
make it shoot?
you need to cock the hammer and pull the trigger.
Do you know this gun that you have in front of you will fire without a pull of the trigger?
Actually, this gun cannot fire because from what I see is missing some parts. So,
Okay, I'm talking about when it was first
oh, sure, of
manufactured.
course.
Does it fire? Would it fire without a pull of the trigger?
No,
Why not?
because the mechanic, the design of the hammer and the trigger has been designed since Samuel Colt made this gun to work in that way.
And can you explain under what circumstances it will only fire?
Well, when you cock the hammer, the trigger will engage the firing knock position. That is the farthest one, so the last position of the hammer. And if you want to release the hammer, you need to pull the trigger. The trigger is just a sear that locks the hammer in that position. And if you want to do that, you need to pull the trigger.
Okay. Now, is there also a manufacturer's warning about whether or not the firing pin should be sitting on a primer?
Well, actually, it's not just a manufacturer, it's a standard rule between shooter when you carry your gun, in this particular gun, to load just only 5 ammo and not 6.
Why is that?
For safety reason. So you will know that you will not, if eventually the gun falls down, nothing happens.
What could happen if the gun falls down and the primer?
Most of the time, nothing, because the hammer is against the frame, and so if you hit the ground, the primer will not shoot the primer. So it's just a safety rule that has been taught to every kind of shooter. So I've been a shooter for myself, and that's what they told me to do. So load 5 rounds on the cylinder instead of 6.
And will it fire? Let's say you load 6. And what could happen if you load 6?
Nothing really, just know that you load 6 rounds instead of 5.
Okay, but if you have the firing pin on the 6th round?
If the firing pin is in the rest position, when the hammer is down the frame, so the firing pin is not against the primer, nothing happens, because if you want to shoot the primer, you need to apply a certain quantity of force to shoot it. So you can get a thick touch on the primer, but the gun will not shoot.
Okay. If the firing pin is actually on the primer?
Close to.
Okay, but you had said that if the firing pin is on the primer and you drop the gun, what could happen?
Usually, it's based on the primer technology. The powder in the primer is not at the top of the primer, it's just a little in the middle. So you need to press it a little more. And when you reach that point, you can shoot the load under the firing pin.
So what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like the only way you can fire this gun is by pulling the trigger?
That's the way that should be done.
Is there another way to
No.
fire this gun?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Let me ask you, what condition was this gun in when Pieta shipped it to EMF?
As I said before, this gun is being produced for a trade show. So we ship the gun without. Well, you are missing one part. That's it.
But does it change any internal components of it?
No.
Now, did Pieta Firearms own EMF during the time EMF owned this gun?
Yeah.
To your knowledge, did EMF do anything to this gun?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just a couple more questions, Mr. Pieta. When Pieta Firearms shipped this to the United States, to EMF. Did it send the firing pins with it?
I don't remember, really. Sorry.
How hard is it to install a firing pin?
Pretty easy. It's just a pin and that's it.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions, but the other lawyers will.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Pieta.
Good afternoon.
Just have a couple of questions for you. We'll be out of here quickly. We heard you say that you personally made this gun. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it was shipped from your company, Pieta, in 2017?
Yeah, that's what is written on the invoice.
Between 2017 and October 2021, you don't know how this gun was handled by any particular individuals. Is that correct?
No, I have no idea.
Your knowledge of the gun's functionality was limited to November of 2017 when it was shipped from your company. Is that fair?
That's not correct, because my knowledge about this gun was also during this trade show that's been held in January. So probably the last time I saw the gun was in January.
So roughly beginning of 2018. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And so you don't know what condition the gun was in on October 21st, 2021, when it was being used on the Rust set by Mr. Baldwin. Is that correct?
Correct.
And before the gun was sent to the FBI for testing in 2022, you were not asked to inspect the gun. Is that right?
Correct.
In fact, the Santa Fe sheriff didn't ask you any questions about the gun at that time. Isn't that right?
Correct.
Or at any time?
I never see anyone except today.
Even though you personally made it. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
And so the first time that you had seen the gun since about early 2018 was about 2 months ago. Isn't that right?
I saw the picture of the gun during a preview interview that we got on Zoom, in a Zoom meeting.
Someone held up a picture of the gun on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, this picture probably.
And that was the first time since 2017 you had seen the gun. Yes.
Well, of course, I got this picture on my computer, but I never recalled that was the one that was sent to everybody else.
And at that point, the gun was already broken. Correct, sir?
The first time I see the gun, I may say yes.
Great. Thank you. No further questions.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Who's your next witness?
Your Honor, the state calls Justin Neal.
All right.
I know she's requested, that's all. So I'm just gonna.
Face the judge, raise your right hand. Please swear.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Have a seat, tuck into the microphone.
Did they get the gun?
Yes.
Okay, I need it. Thank you. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yeah, my name is Justin Neal.
And sir, how are you employed?
I own my own marketing firm.
And what kind of work do you do? What kind of marketing work?
My marketing firm is a very stereotypical ad agency, and we have another leg to our company where we recruit and manage sales reps for our clients,
What kind of clients do you have?
primarily outdoors.
And are you affiliated with Pieta Firearms?
Yes.
How?
Pieta's a little bit more robust than the other clients I have. I essentially handle North America for them as it pertains to sales and marketing. And I also handle EMF, which they are part of, as their sales and marketing.
What is EMF?
Early Modern Firearms is an importer, and it's based out of Santa Ana, California. They have been in business for 65 plus years, and very much back in the day, they used to supply a lot of firearms, Pieta and otherwise, to Hollywood.
Who owns EMF at this time?
Alessandro and Alberto Pieta.
And how long have they owned EMF?
I believe 2017.
And what exactly is it that you do for EMF?
I handle, again, the sales of the guns that they have of Pieta's. EMF only imports and distributes meaning sells to retailers, Pieta firearms. So I handle the sales of Pieta firearms through EMF through distribution.
Are you required to have a federal firearms license?
I am.
And why is that?
I am an RP on the FFL for EMF. There has to be two responsible parties, and the Pieta family or the Pietas entrusted in me to be one of the RPs on that FFL.
And RP is what?
Responsible party.
And what does the responsible party do?
The responsible party is responsible for the distribution, the importing of the firearms, and all the paperwork thereof.
So as the responsible party for EMF, are you also required to be aware of what transactions take place, what firearms are sold by EMF?
Yes.
Are you familiar with how EMF maintains its records of sales?
Yes.
In September of 2021, do you recall a transaction between EMF and a company called PDQ Arms and Prop?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recall that?
I recall that because I saw the actual sales record or the shipping invoice and the packing slip.
I'm going to show you, well, let me ask you this. How did PDQ contact you, or how is it that you guys learned that PDQ needed to purchase arms?
Yeah, they contacted EMF.
Okay. And what was the request for?
The request was for firearms that he saw on the website. EMF obviously has a website, and he wanted some revolvers. And at that time, 2021 was the heart of the pandemic, and Pieta and every gun manufacturer was back ordered. So we didn't have any. The lady in which he talked to initially said, we do have display guns that we show at trade shows. And so we said we had those guns.
Okay. Let me show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 52.
Mm-hmm.
No objection.
Your Honor, the state would move into evidence 52.
States 52 is admitted and made public.
I'm going to show you, well, before you is States Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that?
I recognize it, yes.
What is it?
It is a Pieta single action revolver.
And how do you recognize that is a Pieta single action revolver?
Because that was a display gun that we had at some of the trade shows in which I attended and I monitored.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as States Exhibit 6 and ask you to put on some gloves and take a look at that gun.
Okay.
Yes, please. Do you recognize States Exhibit 6?
Yes,
What is it?
it is the same gun that's shown on screen, the Pieta single action revolver.
So it's the same gun as depicted on 52? State's Exhibit 52.
Yes.
And tell me, was this one of the guns that was sold to PDQ?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as state's. Keep that in front of you because I may ask you some additional questions. If you can just close the box, but I will ask you some additional questions. Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 53.
No objection.
We're moving to having State's Exhibit 53.
States 53 is admitted.
Mr. Neal, do you recognize what's in front of you as State's Exhibit 53?
Yes.
What is it?
It is a shipping report, and that is a shipping invoice
From whom to whom?
from EMF to PDQ.
And when was that?
It was in 21, order date 9/29/21.
Okay, so on September 29, 2021, were these firearms that are listed on this invoice shipped to PDQ?
Yes.
And is Exhibit 6 that's in front of you one of those firearms that's on this invoice?
Yes.
Which one is it? You can actually touch the screen and it'll mark.
Oh, well, yeah. I'd have to see the serial number.
Okay, so
On the
if you want to
gun.
look at the serial number of the gun in Exhibit 6. Actually, if you want to open it and you can check the serial number.
Yeah, it's right here.
Is it not making a mark? It might be your gloves.
It's the third one. I've got gloves on.
Okay.
It's the third one.
So,
E52277.
this one right here?
Yes.
So the number.
Yes.
Now let me ask you, when did you become affiliated with EMF?
2018.
And do you recall approximately, was it beginning, mid, end of 2018?
And
And when you became affiliated with EMF, did EMF already have Exhibit 6 in its inventory?
yes.
And did this gun, Exhibit 6, remain with EMF from the time that you were with them until September 29, 2021?
Yes.
And what did EMF use Exhibit 6, this particular gun, for?
To display at primarily industry trade shows, business to business shows, B2B shows.
So it was owned by the company the entire time?
Yes.
Did EMF do any work on this gun?
No.
Did EMF inspect it for quality assurance purposes?
Before each show, functionality, it wasn't, they didn't take apart the gun or anything, just to make sure it functioned properly. And then they would put it in what we call a sock, which is basically a soft case.
And when you say functionality, what does that mean?
That the gun works properly, not firing it, never fired, just the 4 traditional click of a Colt firearm, and the trigger worked properly.
And at any point during 2018 to September of 2021, was there any indication that this gun malfunctioned or had any defects?
No.
What condition was it in when it was sold to PDQ on September 29, 2021?
It was in perfect condition as far as I know.
You said that it's, how often was this gun checked? It was owned by EMF.
We do approximately 5 shows a year, and so at least 5 times.
And you say 5 shows, does that mean, is it in a display case?
It is in a locked glass display case.
So people can't just come and grab it?
They can't grab it, no.
Do you also, well, let me ask you this before we move on to the next topic. When this gun was shipped to PDQ, do you know what it was shipped in?
Yeah, EMF follows standard operating procedures, which they do for any gun shipped, whether it's to a dealer, a big box store, distributor, influencer. It is in Pieta makes and supplies EMF with a very hard styrofoam box that's molded for a single action. And it's placed in there, then a cover over the top of it that's fit to it, and then another cardboard box sleeve that slides over the top of that, sealed, and then it is put into another shipping box with whatever other guns or accessories the attended person or store requests.
Would that have been the manner in which it would have been shipped to PDQ?
Yes.
Do you also handle customer service calls for Pieta guns in the United States?
I handle quite a bit of the customer service calls, yes. Not all, but a lot.
Approximately how many would you say?
Over the years, since 2018, I probably on average handle 5 or 6 a month.
Okay. Have you ever received a complaint or a call about a Pieta revolver going off by itself?
Never.
Are you familiar with how this particular gun fires?
Am I familiar with how it fires?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Does it fire without a pull of the trigger?
No.
May I have a moment here?
Yes, I'm here, Councilor French.
Mr. Neal, if this particular gun, Exhibit 6, if it had displayed any defects in functionality, would it have still been shown at trade shows?
No.
Why not?
The purpose of Pieta or EMF going to a trade show is to sell firearms to FFL dealers, holders, not the public, but sporting goods stores, if you will. And if a buyer who wanted to specifically see this gun or any other was to hold it under our watchful eye, of course, and it was defective, he would probably not buy that gun or any other gun that we have.
So would it be fair to say you put up the best of the best that Pieta has to offer?
Absolutely.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Does the court want this one? Thank you, Mr. Neal. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
We have no questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. You're excused, sir. Thank you. Next witness.
Give me just a minute, we're just a little out of order. Give us just one moment. Sure. Your Honor, let me just a moment, I'm missing my notes.
Okay.
Found it. The state calls Corporal Alexandria Hancock.
Face the judge and raise your right hand, please.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat.
For the record, even though I know it's repetitive.
Alexandria Hancock.
And how are you currently employed?
I am a corporal with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department?
It will be 7 years in November.
And how did you become involved with this case?
In 2021, I was a detective with the Sheriff's Office. I was assigned to the Violent Crimes Division. On that day, we had received a call for a shooting at a movie set on the Bonanza Creek Ranch.
And you said you were on duty, and I'm sorry if I didn't hear you. What were you at the time? Were you a corporal?
No, I was a detective.
And did you show up to the scene there at Bonanza Creek Ranch?
Yes.
Do you know approximately what time?
I believe it was between 2:30 and 3 p.m.
And so can you kind of give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury an idea of what was going on? Were you the only detective on scene? Were there other detectives? What was happening?
Yeah, so when we had originally, it's called a briefing, essentially, back at our office, at the Sheriff's Office, we had a short briefing with all the detectives that were there that day about what had been learned thus far as to what occurred on the ranch. And so during, or I should say after that briefing, the detectives were assigned at that point on who would be handling and who would be assisting. And then from there, the entire team of us went out to the ranch.
So approximately how many people were in the team?
I want to say maybe 5 or 6 of us.
And how does the Sheriff's Department traditionally, is one detective named primary, or are there more than one? How does that work?
Just one is primary, and then typically they will have a secondary just depending on the case.
And how did it work out with this case?
Originally with this case, a different detective, his name's Joel Cano, was assigned the primary detective, and then I was assigned secondary.
And just so that we're clear, at some point, did you become primary?
Yes.
And at what point was that?
Probably at least a couple weeks later.
Okay. Now, in that interim, in those 2 weeks, were you actively working on the case?
Yeah, I was assisting with it.
And As the assisting detective, did you conduct interviews with witnesses on October, and then we'll back up.
Okay, on that day, I interviewed Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, David Halls, and Alec Baldwin.
So I want to be clear, you as the assisting detective interviewed all three of the people that were ultimately criminally charged.
Yes.
So if you were interviewing all of those, what I'm going to call sort of main players, what was the primary Detective Kano doing?
He was, on the day of the incident, he was interviewing the numerous people that needed to be interviewed back at the ranch.
And give us an idea of who those folks were.
That Detective Kano interviewed? Mm-hmm. They were people that were said to be inside the church at the time of the incident, or members that assisted with the armor.
Why was it necessary to have two detectives doing interviews at the same time?
Because of how many people were involved.
Okay. And have you been a primary investigator with the Sheriff's Department on this case since 2 weeks after the incident?
Yes.
Now, when you were dispatched, well, it sounds like you weren't really dispatched, were you?
No.
Who called you in?
My lieutenant at the time, which was Mike Martinez.
And you indicated that you had a briefing.
Yes.
And tell us kind of what information you got at the briefing that you had before you went out to the scene.
Yeah, so during our briefing there at the office, we were told that there was a movie being filmed at Bonanza Creek Ranch, and then sometime during that day, shortly before we were called in for that briefing, that two people had been shot on the set.
Did you receive information that the shooting had been characterized as an accident?
I do recall reading that on our CAD.
And as a detective with the Sheriff's Department, when you get called to a shooting that's being characterized as an accident, does that mean to you that there will be no criminal charges?
No.
Have you been dispatched or involved in accident investigations in the past that turned into criminal cases?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear. I know that the jury's heard some of this. So you interviewed Hannah Gutierrez, correct?
That's correct.
And what role did she have on the set?
She was the main armorer on Rust.
And you also indicated that you interviewed someone named David Halls. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall what his role was on the set?
He was the assistant director.
And then, of course, you interviewed Mr. Baldwin, and we understand that he's an actor, correct?
Correct.
I want to just take you back for a moment. During opening, did you hear the defense attorney say that Sarah Zachary was not interviewed on October 21st?
I did hear that.
Is that correct?
No.
Was Sarah Zachary actually interviewed on October 21st?
She was.
Who interviewed her?
Detective Joel Kano with the assistance of Detective Ray Arndt.
And who was Sarah Zachary?
She was the props master for Rust.
If you would try, to explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the relationship between the prop master and the armorer based on your understanding?
What I understood between the prop master and the armorer, as it pertains to Rust, is that they're technically two different departments. They have different functions, different roles, do different things. But in the case of Rust, the prop master and the armorer assisted each other because of how what they would describe to be prop heavy this movie was.
You get an understanding of when we say prop, exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
So one of these gun holsters, would that be a prop?
Yes.
Would the guns themselves be props?
Yes.
Even the live gun, the real guns, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
And the ammunition, would that be considered a prop?
Yes.
Okay. And does that also include glasses and cups and plates and silverware?
Yeah, anything that an actor would use in a scene, excluding like wardrobe items.
Okay. And I understand that you indicated that Ms. Zachary was interviewed on the 21st of October by Detective Cano. Did you also conduct a follow-up interview with Sarah Zachary at a later date?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall approximately when that was?
I believe it was sometime in November.
So just the following month?
Yes.
And you testified that you conducted an interview with Hannah Gutierrez on October 21st. Did you also conduct a follow-up interview with her at a later date?
Yes, I did.
And approximately when was that, if you recall?
I want to say that was in November as well.
And you interviewed Mr. Baldwin on the 21st, correct?
Yes.
And did you have subsequent contact with Mr. Baldwin after the interview that you did on October 21st?
Yes, I did.
And how were you having contact with him? Was he in New Mexico, or how was that happening?
No, he wasn't in New Mexico at that point, but I would receive phone calls and sometimes text messages.
From Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Generally speaking, was it Mr. Baldwin reaching out to you or you reaching out to him?
It was him reaching out to me.
So he had your cell phone number?
Yes, my department cell.
And just to be clear, do the defense attorneys also have your contact information?
They do.
Have they sent you text messages?
I don't know exactly her title, but members from their team, yes.
Okay, so they actually have your cell phone number?
Yes.
And you've made yourself available to them?
That's correct.
And you do that whether I'm there or not, right?
Yes.
With regard to your November interview with Ms. Gutierrez, did you have a conversation with Ms. Gutierrez about who loaded the gun?
I did.
And what did Ms. Gutierrez say?
That she loaded the gun herself.
And did you have a conversation with Ms. Gutierrez concerning the box of ammunition that was holding that one suspected live round?
I did.
And what did Ms. Gutierrez say?
That it would be a box that she would have provided.
Objection, hearsay, unless this is information acted upon.
So my response, unless you want us to approach, is that these are statements against interest and they come in under that exception.
I don't believe that they are, but like I said, if it's information acted upon and we can cross on it, it's fine.
All right, go ahead.
Did you have conversations? Well, let me ask you. Ms. Gutierrez indicated that she brought that box of ammunition on the set. Is that right?
That it was similar to one that she would have provided.
During that interview, did she produce a photograph for you?
She did.
And the photograph that she produced, did she tell you where she got it?
I don't know if she said in that interview exactly where she got it, but she did describe it to be a box like that was in the photo would be what she provided.
And the photograph that she showed you during the interview, did it match exactly the label on the box that contained the live ammunition?
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you have any question about who introduced the live ammunition to the set of Rust?
No.
Who do you believe it was based on your investigation?
Hannah.
Did you have conversations with Ms. Gutierrez about her firearms training?
The one that she conducted?
Yes,
or her own experience?
No.
Objection, hearsay.
I think we should approach. Do you not want to?
Oh, go ahead. Come on, up.
Okay, I've been doing a little casting. I'm going to cast Donald Trump to play Alex Baldwin since Baldwin played Donald Trump. Figure might as well. I'm going to have Denise Crosby do a repeat as our blonde prosecutrix. And the witness will be played by Princess Beatrice of York. I'm working on some of the other people in the courtroom at this phase. I think that the only way Alec Baldwin could look more arrogant is if he were sitting there in a tuxedo. He just looks very condescending right there. He needs some wire rim spectacles that make him look less like he's trying to be domineering. Oh, I know. The bald guy at the defense end of the defense table, he's going to be played by the actor who played the principal in Back to the Future.
You conducted an interview with Mr. Baldwin, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you learn during that interview whether or not Mr. Baldwin received any training regarding the use of these firearms?
Yeah, he had mentioned that he did a training session shortly after with, he said Hannah, which was the armorer, and then I believe he said Sarah and their assistant Nicole was there.
Okay. And did you interview Seth Kinney?
Yes, several times.
How many times do you think you talked to him?
I don't know if I could I'm not sure I can put a number on it. I don't know, probably at least between 5 and 10.
Okay. And was Mr. Kenny cooperative with you?
Yes.
Did you request any search warrants in this case?
Yes.
What search warrants were requested?
I had drafted the search warrant for the prop truck as well as the search warrant for PDQ.
And PDQ, is that Mr. Kenny's business?
Yes.
Let me ask you, have you ever worked on a movie set before?
No.
And have you ever investigated a crime on a movie set before?
No.
On October 21st, 2021, did you know what a prop truck was?
No.
At some point through your investigation, did you learn what a prop truck was?
Yes.
And what's a prop truck?
It was an area that was used for storage.
Storage of?
This particular prop truck?
Yeah.
It was actually multiple departments that were using it. I don't know exactly which ones, but the armorer and the props department had approximately half of like the back of the truck.
And I think we heard previous testimony from Ms. Popple that the search of the prop truck didn't happen until the 27th of October, I think?
Yes.
Is that right? What was the delay?
Well, I was not the case agent at that time, and so I really wasn't the one in charge of the investigation. And so what happens with your case agent is they kind of develop the flow and decide what's needed based on the information that they have and what we need to get.
What was one of the first things that you did when you became the primary on this case?
Started reviewing a lot of information.
How long after you became primary did you request a warrant for the prop truck?
Well, I wasn't the primary at the time that I requested that warrant. I was assisting.
Okay.
And so, I mean, between the day that the incident occurred, which was the 21st, and then the day that the search warrant was, I think, applied and executed for was the 27th, so 6 days.
And was the prop truck secured during that time?
Through my interviews, I found out that it was secured.
And how was it secured?
So the set, one of the individuals that worked on the set of Rust.
Objection, you're set. You're distracted. She knew it at the time.
This is information that she learned during her investigation.
But afterwards, it has nothing to do with.
Ask her did you get that date? I mean, time?
In terms of when she learned?
Yes.
When did you learn? Let me ask you this. When you showed up on the 27th of October, did anyone meet you at the prop truck?
Yes, and then we also had deputies that went out there at least a couple days before we had drafted that search warrant to secure the truck with 24-hour surveillance.
So when you went to the prop truck on the 27th, did someone have to meet you there to open it?
Yes.
Who had to meet you there to open it?
Her name was Ro Walters.
Okay. So on that day, did you understand that it was locked?
Yeah, inaccessible.
Okay, because she had to open it for you.
Correct.
And other than props generally, tell us what other things were stored inside that truck.
There was a firearm safe with firearms in it. There were firearms outside of that safe. I think there were like a bunch of chairs in it and maybe some like shade tents and stuff like that. There was quite a bit of stuff.
after you were let into the prop truck and it was unlocked for you, describe for us the safe. How big is it?
Maybe about 4 feet tall and maybe about a foot wide.
And did someone have to come and unlock that safe for you?
Yes.
Who was that?
Seth Kenny.
And when you executed the warrant on the prop truck, as it relates to this case, just summarize for us what you found. I mean, you know, we don't care about tables and chairs and stuff.
Additional firearms, more ammunition. I think that was kind of the major things that we got off of it.
And are you familiar with the ammunition that was provided to the set of arrest by Seth Kenny?
Yes.
Where was that ammunition found?
Inside of the prop truck in a bag.
And when you say in a bag, was it inside something else?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Was it
box that was inside a duffel bag type thing?
okay? And is it also, were you able, did you locate a black gun belt?
I don't think I was the one that located that.
Okay, all right, no problem. And we understand that you also executed a search warrant on PDQ, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was on November 30th, I think we heard?
Yes.
So prior to executing that search warrant, had Seth Kenny talked to you about live rounds?
I don't, yes, I believe so.
Do you recall, did Seth Kenny at some point bring live rounds to you?
He did.
Do you know whether that was before you searched PDQ?
It was before.
So you knew before you searched PDQ that he had live rounds because he took them and told you?
Yes.
Did you receive information prior to the search at PDQ regarding a green ammo can?
I did.
Who did you receive that information from?
From Thel Reed, which was Hannah's father.
In part, was it based on the information from Hannah's father that you executed the search warrant on PDQ?
Yeah, the information I learned from him was some of what I used.
And just to be clear, I want to be clear, the reason that you went and searched PDQ, one of the reasons is because Mr. Reed said Seth Kenny's got live ammunition, right?
Yeah, he did say that. He actually said that he was the one that picked up that live ammunition.
Who was?
Thel.
Thel picked it up?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Corporal, did it occur to you that Thel Reed may be giving you inaccurate information to protect his daughter?
Objection.
What?
I mean, unless we're going to be able to ask witnesses. Never.
Continue.
I'm just asking you, I'm not asking about anybody else. Did it occur to you when you took the information from Mr. Reed and got the search warrant, did you know who to believe at that point in time?
No.
Okay. And I want to be clear, did Mr. Reed, and this is just why you did what you did Mr. Reed indicate to you that the ammunition at PDQ he thought was the same ammunition on the set of arrest?
Yes.
Did that turn out to be true?
No.
even though, well, let me ask you this, the live ammunition that was collected from PDQ, did it just visibly look dissimilar to the live ammunition from Rust?
Yes.
Even though it looked dissimilar, did you send it to the FBI for testing anyway?
We did.
Did you ever discover any evidence throughout your entire investigation that Seth Kinney supplied live rounds to the set of Rust?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Seth Kinney was present on the set of Rust until you met him at the prop truck?
No.
During your investigation, did you ever discover any evidence that Mr. Kinney modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Ms. Gutierrez modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever formally arrest Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Does that have anything to do with whether or not she was ultimately convicted of a crime?
No.
Did you ever arrest Dave Halls?
No.
Do you know whether or not he was convicted of a crime at some point?
Yes, he was.
And the fact that you arrested him or didn't arrest him, did that have anything to do with it?
No.
Does as a law enforcement officer, do you always arrest people who then later are criminally charged?
Sorry, you mean like arrest them right away? And
Do they have to be arrested in order to be criminally charged?
No.
Why would you not arrest someone?
To develop the investigation, if we're still waiting or investigating facts, trying to find information, and to get potential suspects or witnesses, whoever is involved, to cooperate with law enforcement.
Who makes the final charging decision in a criminal case?
The district attorney's office, essentially.
The prosecutor does, right?
Yes.
You guys don't. The law enforcement officers don't, correct?
Right.
Now, in addition to searching the prop truck and searching PDQ, did you also ask to search cell phones?
I did.
And whose cell phones did you search or ask to be searched?
I requested searches of Alec Baldwin's cell phone, Hannah Gutierrez's, David Hall's, and Sarah Zachary.
Did you review all of those cell phone extractions?
I did.
And when you review the cell phone extraction, what do you get to see? Do you get to see text messages?
I do.
Do you get to see photographs?
Yes.
When you reviewed the photographs from Ms. Gutierrez's cell phone, did you notice anything that stood out to you?
I did.
What was that?
There was a photograph taken, I believe it was maybe end of November, that she was, there was two bullets, 2 rounds, and I believe her hand. It caused a little bit of concern. And then I think I actually had found a couple photos of it. And one of the the bullets in that photograph was circled, kind of how you can edit a picture. And it said, I believe it was dud on top of it.
That bullet that was circled that said dud on it, was it a Starline brass casing?
It was.
Did it have a nickel primer?
Yes. Well, silver.
Silver, nickel,
Yeah.
okay. Just in terms of the color.
Yes.
And in terms of the projectile shape, did it match the live rounds from the set of rest?
It did.
All right, counsel, we're going to stop for the day. Jury, I want you to, instead of 8:30, I want you to be here at 9:30 downstairs. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Thank you.
All rise to the jury.
Oh, did you see that? Oh, it's an exhibit. She's having. Oh, exhibits.
All right, we're not dismissed for the day. We're not dismissed for the day. While I'm taking a break, I want you all to get your exhibits ready over here. Everything. Okay. Lock up for the day. I'll be back in 10. Okay?
Okay, please. Haven't technically been and
Thank you, blessed beyond measure, Sis Deb. I have skin that reacts to bully stimuli in an exaggerated way, so I just need to go get these bug bites checked to make sure I don't need to be on some antibiotics or something, because I've got some tenderness and so forth, so it's not good. And that concludes that. She told the jury to be here at 9:30 in the morning, so I guess we get to sleep late. Oh, there was one time where Alec Baldwin was covering his face with both hands, and he was looking like he was realizing he could be doing some time. So, okay, well, we will set this up for tomorrow and see you at 9:30 Mountain Time. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.